Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a literary podcast where we have been deep diving into your favorite novels.
This is Jac.
And I'm Amy.
And our listeners love to share their thoughts and theories via email and voicemail, so we're sharing some of them via our weekly mini episodes.
The views expressed by the hosts and listeners are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised. We asked you to ask us writing advice.
The most, self-congratulatory request. Writing advice do you want from us?
For our non-published asses. But I feel qualified because we've interviewed a lot of authors, so I am happy to tell you what they say. All right, first one. This one hurts. It all hurts. How do I world build? I get so overwhelmed keeping everything organized. It's a lot.
That is an excellent question, and as Jac said, it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
What I think, who are we talking to recently?
Kate Golden.
Right.
Because I know what you're going to say.
Talking about the Fourth Wing, and Rebecca Yarros is married to someone who's been in military academies and has lived on military bases. So she built a world based off her knowledge of being in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about taking what you know and building something from it.
Kate Golden also said that when she was writing Dawn of Onyx, she asked herself, what's the religious system? What's the political system?
Mm-hmm.
And, if people are more landlocked, what does that mean for them versus people who are in ports and oceans where they're going to get more culture and other things exposed to other types of culture? And when she said that, I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I think the best way to start is pick something to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, in my fantasy novel, I focused on there are these 7 sages that are treated as deities. And what are the holidays that are celebrated in recognition of those sages? What influence do they have on people? Are certain villages dedicated to one sage or all the sages?
Yeah.
And those sorts of questions.
And then it just kind of builds from there. And as for organization, Scrivener. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion because for a long time I just took notes in Word and I couldn't remember which note was where in which file. And it was a pain in the butt.
Scrivener has been saving my ass.
Yeah, it's a great way to organize stuff.
Okay, maybe I should have started with this one, but I'm not going to edit this any differently. How do I get started? Where do you begin with your process?
I begin with scenes. So I used to, like I said, I used to handwrite a lot. And I have notes from 2007 of just a random scene, of random dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it was the angsty moment that I would write because I was an angsty emo kid. And I would just write an angsty scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I just write a collection of angsty scenes. And then I'd be like, how can I make this into a story?
Let me connect the dots.
Right, exactly.
I'll have various scenes and then the story will kind of come to play in my mind. And then I'll do a chapter by chapter summary. And some chapter summaries are like then they fuck. And then other chapter summaries are detailed, and I know I want it to hit all these things, but when I write the whole book through these chapter by chapter summaries, it helps me tackle and know what's coming up. And then I have to change them all the time.
All the time. That's the thing with planning. Plans always change. One thing is, who wrote Hannibal? I forget. Is it Thomas Harding?
A genius.
I remember reading an interview where he read Dragon, which was his first Hannibal book.
Mm-hmm.
He just had an image of Will, an FBI agent, searching a house. And that was the beginning of Hannibal.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. He just had this scene play out in his mind of some guy searching a house because of murders, and that was it.
You know, when I think of Hannibal, I think of you and I talking, and then I think of you quoting a part of Hannibal, this very specific quote, and I think about you quoting this a lot.
Really? Which quote was it?
You were saying that because we were talking about characters and different heights, and like, you know, all these like main male leads are so high, are so tall, and you were saying that in Hannibal, the main male, like Alex, or no, what's his name? Will. Same. Will and his wife are like the same height. Mm-hmm. And he says that he loves it because it's like being in bed with her while standing. Mm-hmm. And I can hear and see you saying that. And I was like, what? That's genius.
It is genius.
It's great.
Yeah, I do love that. I mean, there are some really, if you have not read the Hannibal series, it will feel like it plays out like the movies, but the writing is so good.
I'll have to read it because Silence of the Lambs is one of my all-time favorite movies.
It's just like, that whole series has such nuggets of chef's kiss.
Got your dog, sir. Mister. When she's like in the well.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, it puts the lotion on its skin. Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me.
Oh, my God.
Such gems. What's your least favorite genre to write?
Anything comedy. I'm not funny.
You're freaking hilarious. You say you're not funny, but you're so funny.
I don't know that I am in my writing.
I mean, you've only ever strived to hurt me in your writing.
Yeah, I strive for the angst. I don't know how to translate my humor into writing.
I know I'm capable of it, but it's not my most... I don't enjoy it as much as I like the hurt scenes. Because I just wrapped on the first draft of my book, and writing the painful scenes, I breezed right through it. And then at the end, when they got back together, spoiler, third act breakup, but when they got back together, it was just like, oh, fuck. It was dragging my feet. I'm like, oh, so now you're happy. Okay. Like,
how dare you be happy?
Yeah. So I feel like it's hard for me to, it's not as fun as a writer.
Yeah.
Although as a reader, I hate it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. How can I be historically accurate when writing timed pieces? Any tips?
Research. I mean, like, that's all I can say.
Well, it goes, I'm going to quote Emily Rath for this one.
Okay.
She said, because she does some historical romance, and she said that she went into the time period that she was most familiar with. Mm-hmm. So I think that if you're tempted to do that, like, you know, don't pick a time when you're like super not familiar. Yeah,
no, that's a great point. If you have read and watched a lot of Regency era stuff, don't go choose to write a Greek mythology book, right? You've got to be really familiar with the content. And if you do want to write that Greek mythology book and you don't know anything,
research.
Lots and lots of research.
So much research. Just don't trust Disney.
Or I wouldn't even trust Wikipedia.
Documentaries. Just tons of documentaries.
Lots of documentaries. Go to the library.
No. No, you won't get me there again.
Use the Libby app. You can.
Okay, I'll do that. I've done my time in the library. I'm not going back there. You can't make me.
Watch me.
No.
Challenge accepted.
No, God, you will.
I will.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
All right, this is a great question. Not that the other ones weren't. But Amy and I talk about this one a lot. First person versus third person, or rotating perspectives. What's your take on who the narrator should be?
Depends on what you want the story to achieve.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's look at ACOTAR and Fourth Wing. Those are both first person.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? It's because there's a lot of secrets being kept from the protagonist that the author does not want the reader to know.
Yep.
So first person suits it best because there's less opportunity for slippage of those secrets so that you have a grander reveal at the end.
And then you look at things like Throne of Glass, where you have a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of other things happening that you just need to keep the reader aware of, which is why you get a lot of third person there.
What I like about the Throne of Glass series and the rotating third person points of view, which I think I could do better in my own writing, is because there's so much going on, there's so many different plot lines, it means you can skip more of the mundane stuff. You can skip more of the journeying. You can skip more of the progress, and you get just flashes and vignettes of an individual. I was thinking about this with like Kingdom of Ash or any of the other later books in the series. If you look
later
at
books.
Earlier, sorry.
No, I like it. The leader books, like.
Oh, did I say leader?
Maybe you didn't, but it sounded like leader to me. And I was like, oh, that's such a fierce way of putting it. Some of the leader books, shit.
Well, I would say that, though, from like Queen of Shadows on.
Yeah.
Those are like the highlight of the series. But if you, for example, look at Manon's storyline, there aren't that many chapters.
No, there aren't.
But she has so much growth.
Mm-hmm.
And you get away with it because you focus on the key moments.
Yep.
And you only can do that with multiple third-person point of views that are rotating.
That's a really good point, where you get to skip all the... It's not like... Sometimes we've talked about it in Wings and Ruin, where it's like, okay, this is a filler. Like,
right.
What are they going to do between the meetings?
Right.
Well, what you do is you just switch to the next character.
Exactly. You can skip a couple days. You can skip a week. You can say, wow, we traveled so hard for a month.
That was a really long journey, guys. Trust me.
There's another format. If you read the 5th season, I actually went and finished the other 2 novels in the series. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It is so good. There's a reason why each of those books won an award.
I love it.
It's so good. But what I love about that point of view is that it slips into future and past constantly. And so
it does.
Because it'll be like, this person didn't know the word manipulate, but she would in a few years. For now, all she understands is XYZ.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's really tricky to do, but it's really fantastic when you can do it.
It is. God, after I read 5th season, I'm like, I accept that I just won't be her.
I know. She's so masterful.
And then when it comes to romance, I like first person because I want the detail. I want POV of he sinks himself into me. I'm like, I want to know it.
Well, actually, that makes me think of something that you said the other day. If you're going to write a spicy book, it's more common now and probably more preferred to do dual point of view.
Yes.
Because and it is exhilarating to get the guy's perspective and the girl's perspective, or
I want to see
if
him
it's not
angst.
if it's not heterosexual, that's totally fine, obviously. But you get both points of view, which is nice.
Yeah, big fans. Big fan. How do you overcome embarrassment about other people reading your work?
Oh my gosh, it took me more than a decade to get over it.
You were embarrassed?
Yeah, I wouldn't let anybody read my novel until... I think we categorize the feeling as embarrassment, but I think it's really fear of criticism. Because it feels uncomfortable. You're giving someone your baby, and you know they're just gonna call it ugly. Like, it's just, it is what it is.
Different. I love it. Like, I don't really get embarrassed when people reading my work. I'm more of like, I want to sit next to you while you soak it in. And I know people, I always remind myself, oh, I guess I'm here for you guys to give me criticism. But like, I'm always like, but did you see this part where I was really proud of myself? But yeah, like, I think there's a certain amount of dread where I can see where it's like, you're worried about what they're going to say about your book rather than,
yeah.
I mean, until I've already warned my mom, because the only time I'll ever be embarrassed is when my mom will read the spicy scenes that I've written.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then her telling me she can do better or something.
I mean, I think what it is if you're feeling embarrassed, it's because you've had really terrible people read your writing in the past. Or
yes.
you have yet to have had a positive experience where someone was like, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And this is why. Instead of just platitudes because they don't know what to say or just being rude. I had a writing instructor. I was talking about the imagery and why I picked a certain theme in one of my short stories. And he was just like, oh, please stop trying to make yourself sound like you're a literature writer.
What? Who was that? Of course. I'm going to bleep out his name, or will I? Of course it was him.
But he put me down so hard when I was like, but I was really intentional with the use of this imagery. And I want to acknowledge that because you're not acknowledging it.
Yeah.
And he just put me down so hard. So I get it. I get like, and that's probably around the time that I stopped letting people read my writing.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm insecure about so many things, but like I have such selective like listening skills when it comes to my writing where I was just like, I know I was criticized. Can't tell you what it was.
You're like, I just feel great.
I feel great. I remember when I had a C. It was my only C I ever had on a paper in college. And I was so pissed off. And I used that paper and I got into York in the UK. And then I came back to him and I was like, your C paper was good enough to get me there. So like, fuck you. It depends on the person and it depends what it is. But like, I have selective hearing when it comes to this where I'm like, but you said I was pretty.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Whereas I have really adverse reactions to rejection.
Yeah.
And any perceived rejection. So for me, it's really hard. So you just have to find people who you can trust and just tell them like, hey, I'm really nervous. I'm really embarrassed. Can you just focus on XYZ?
Yeah. Yeah. What does a first draft look like? Like, when do all the subtle, his jaw tighten, etc. comes in? Just finished my first draft of my book. And I can tell you, there were parts where I was like, you know what? I'm going to make him more of a boy later.
That's hilarious.
Where I was like, I'm going to have to figure out how to boyify him another time.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I felt the same way with my first draft of, I just need to get this down on paper. I'll fix it later.
Yeah.
I just need to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if it's fine if people do that in their first round and they're just talented like that. But if you're not doing it the first time, like, don't worry about it. It's definitely, for me, I'm going in and be like, I'll add his alpha wholeness later.
Yeah, that's why it's called a first draft.
Yeah.
You're definitely drafting more after that.
Don't worry about it. How do you choose what to write about? Which idea do you pick?
I think it's whatever speaks to you the most, whatever you're most excited about.
Yeah. I mean, I was working on a fantasy book, which I really love and I would love to come back to. And then I was like, I'm going to test out this romance book. And then 4 months later, I was like, it turns out I really like it. It's great. I think also the characters kind of start talking to you.
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot with a lot of the authors that we've interviewed. And like, I know the second book I'm going to write to the follow-up is going to be about the main male lead's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell right off the bat. And it's like, you can kind of just tell when they're special.
Yeah.
And then there's this other character who she's been poking around in my head. And I just keep like... So for me, I associate characters a lot with songs.
Mm.
So if I keep seeing them in songs...
Yeah.
Then that's when I'm like, your story must be told.
Yeah, I used to have a very specific playlist back in the early 2000s that was like songs that inspired my story, that made me think of my characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most difficult part of choosing a story and sticking with it is staying in the story.
Yeah.
Because when I'm reading the drafts of my novel and working on it, I think about it all the time and the characters speak to me. But the second I stop thinking about it or stop because of work or life or whatever, it slips through your fingers.
Yeah. It's staying in there.
Yeah.
It's
Tessa
hard. Bailey said, I love quoting all these people. Then I'm such a name dropper. I don't know if you heard of her, but Tessa Bailey told us that she was like, it's a muscle. You just kind of have to.
Yeah.
And then Elise Kova, such an asshole. And then Elise Kova said that sometimes, like on the weekend, she'll try to write 100 words or 1,000 words between Saturday and Sunday.
Right. So that she never like actually leaves the world.
Because she says leaving the world's the hardest.
Yep.
Question. Does imagery matter?
I think imagery is what makes the writing.
Yeah.
Good imagery.
Yeah.
If you're repetitive with your imagery, it can feel like, I hate to be mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, but
you're about to say it. Say it.
It feels weak.
Oh, but not weakly, but not strongly. Wait, what? No.
She said quietly, but not weakly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Sarah, stop it. There's so much of it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at my threads. But yeah, I think that it's the images that stick with us.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes it more poetic, and not everyone's like that. Not everyone feels like imagery is necessary. But I think imagery is great for helping people understand something for which they have no frame of reference. Mm-hmm. It helps bridge that gap of like, I don't understand what this person's experiencing, but if you give me this image, I can understand it better.
I like to use imagery as understanding where the character's at mentally. Because if they're noticing it and they're having a moment with it, then maybe they don't want to deal with what they're working with, what they're surrounded in. Maybe it's because they're intimidated of their surroundings. So I think imagery, when it's used best, and again, my opinion is it's used best to show you how the narrator is coping with what's happening.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think what I love about imagery is when it's used as subtext and it's used instead of saying, I thought about how upset I was and had to work through that feeling. You use imagery to convey the growth or the processing.
Yeah.
Because not everyone is really cognizant of their own thoughts and feelings and process.
Yeah.
And I think imagery is a great way to convey that to the reader.
I agree. So, yeah, it does. The answer. How do you know when your story/writing goes from good to great?
I don't think you'll ever know.
Oh, it's so funny. So while we were setting up, I was telling Amy about I finished writing the first draft and there was times where I was reading it and I'm like, I hate you. This is the worst thing I've ever written. This is trash. No one's going to like it. And then Amy, you're like, yeah, but then there's also the moments when you're writing something and you're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And I think, at least for me, I can tell the difference when I read with momentum. If I'm rereading my own writing and it feels like I'm turning the pages really fast and I'm really invested in it, that's when I know I wrote something well.
Yeah.
When it's like a slog to get through 5 pages, then it's terrible.
Yeah.
Because if it's hard for me, it's going to be hard for the reader.
Absolutely. And just I don't know, when you spend time on it, and I know that sounds lame, but there's so many times that I've written a short story and I've edited the first part of it with all my heart. And then I kind of give up by the second half.
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
So I think it's just being super meticulous with it.
Yeah. And sometimes that includes distance.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing I learned is that sometimes you do have to step away from the writing. You have to let it marinate, just like a good pot of curry. You got to let the flavors come out, and then you go back.
Are we talking Thai or Indian?
I was thinking Indian, but Thai as well.
Okay.
And then you go back, and you can look at it with more distance.
Yeah.
And less fatigue.
And I think also, like, during that time, hand it over to other people. Like, there's a reason why editors exist.
Right.
And no matter what, if you want to get self-published or any kind of publish, an editor's going to have to come in.
Right.
So at a certain point, you just kind of have to tap out.
Yep.
Like, I'm out. Thank you for listening to this mini episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com or via our Camflare voicemail system. Please visit booktalkforbooktalk.com for more information.
You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye!
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.